There's a small island in the Bay of Bengal that you're legally forbidden from visiting. North Sentinel Island sits about 750 miles off the coast of India, roughly the size of Manhattan, and it's home to what might be the last truly isolated tribe on Earth. The Sentinelese have lived there for thousands of years. They hunt with bows and arrows, fish with spears, and have made it abundantly clear through decades of violent encounters that they'd very much like to be left alone. Most rational people hear this and think, yeah, probably best to respect that. But then there's Mykhailo Viktorovych Polyakov, a 24-year-old YouTuber from Arizona, who apparently missed that memo entirely. In March 2025, he decided that what his struggling channel really needed was footage from one of the most legally and ethically prohibited places on the planet. And somehow, he actually made it there. Before we get into the spectacularly bad decision-making, let's talk about who Mykhailo actually is. He started his YouTube channel, Neo-Orientalist, in September 2024. Not exactly ancient history in YouTube terms. By the time this whole North Sentinel situation happened, he had managed to scrape together about 4,600 subscribers. Respectable for a new channel, sure, but hardly the numbers that would suggest he was onto something massive. His main claim to fame was a 6-part vlog series where he spent 3 weeks in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, which, credit where it's due, takes a certain amount of courage. He genuinely seemed interested in showing viewers a side of Afghanistan they wouldn't normally see. Historical sites, daily life, cultural practices. The kind of content that could have built him a solid audience over time if he'd been patient about it. And people noticed. One viewer commented appreciatively about how his videos actually showed real Afghan life instead of just hotel tours and restaurant meals. His videos were pulling 20,000 to 30,000 views each, which, for a brand new channel posting its first content, is genuinely impressive. But there were warning signs. His shorts showed him posing with militia members' machine guns, filming violent road rage incidents, shooting alongside armed groups. The thrill-seeking side was already there, bubbling under the surface of the cultural documentary veneer. The problem was that Mykhailo didn't want to build an audience gradually. He wanted to go viral, immediately. And in his mind, the fastest route to that was doing something so audacious, so completely prohibited, that it would be impossible to ignore. So he set his sights on North Sentinel Island, and somehow convinced himself this was a good idea. The island time. Forgot to understand why this is such a monumentally terrible plan. You need to understand what North Sentinel Island actually is. It's not just some random tropical paradise. It's home to the Sentinelese, a tribe that anthropologists believe might be direct descendants of some of the first humans to migrate out of Africa. They've been on that island for somewhere between 30,000 and 60,000 years, living essentially the same way their ancestors did, hunting, fishing, gathering. No agriculture, no metallurgy, no written language. There are maybe 200 of them left, and they want absolutely nothing to do with the outside world. The first recorded contact attempt was in the 1880s, when the British Navy decided in their infinite colonial wisdom that these people needed to be civilized. They landed on the island, captured 6 tribe members, an elderly couple and 4 children, and brought them back to Port Blair, the nearest major settlement. The elderly couple died almost immediately, because here's the thing about isolated populations. They have no immunity to diseases that the rest of us carry around without thinking twice. A common cold can be lethal. The flu can wipe out entire communities. The children survived, and the British, perhaps realizing they'd made a catastrophic mistake, sent them back with gifts as a peace offering, but the damage was done. From that point on, the Sentinelese have responded to virtually every contact attempt with hostility. And honestly, can you blame them? In 2004, after a devastating tsunami hit the region, the Indian Coast Guard sent a helicopter to check if the tribe had survived. A Sentinelese man stood on the beach and fired arrows at it. The message was clear. Filming them without permission is prohibited specifically to protect them from exploitation and disease. But Mykhailo got his content, and by late March, his motorboat was ready. He spent a few days studying routes, monitoring tides, figuring out the best approach. This wasn't a spontaneous decision anymore. This was planned, calculated. On March 29, 2025, at around 1 a.m., he launched from Kumadera Beach, a less patrolled area, and headed toward North Sentinel Island. The trip took about 9 hours. The water was unusually calm. The Coast Guard patrols were light because he'd chosen his departure point strategically, and by 10 a.m., he was within sight of the island, and it was completely silent. No Sentinelese on the beach, no arrows flying through the air, just an empty shoreline and dense forest beyond, which, if you think about it, was incredibly lucky. If the tribe had been there, this story would have ended very differently. But Mykhailo, apparently frustrated that his grand expedition wasn't giving him the dramatic footage he'd imagined, decided to announce his presence by blowing a whistle repeatedly for over an hour. He was literally trying to get the attention of people who might kill him, because apparently an empty island wasn't good enough content. Eventually, he reached the beach. Still no one around. He spent the next hour filming the deserted shoreline, collecting sand samples, probably feeling pretty pleased with himself for being one of the few people alive to set foot on North Sentinel Island and survive. And then he did something that shifted this from dangerously stupid to potentially catastrophic. He left a half-empty can of Diet Coke on the beach as an offering, a can that he'd already drunk from, a can that now contained his saliva, his germs, his bacteria. He left it there for the Sentinelese to find, knowing full well, or at least that these people have no immunity to outside diseases. If even one person from the tribe drinks from that can, it could trigger an outbreak that wipes out the entire population. We're talking about a group of maybe 200 people who have survived in isolation for tens of thousands of years, and they could be wiped out by a YouTuber's backwash. Mykhailo left the island that same day, probably feeling pretty good about himself. He'd done what few people had ever done. He had the footage. He'd survived. Mission accomplished. Except on his way back to Kumadera Beach that evening, two local fishermen spotted his boat. They knew exactly where he must have come from, and they called the authorities. On March 31st, 2 days after his trip, Indian police tracked him down and arrested him. They confiscated his GoPro with all the footage, launched a criminal investigation. Under Indian law, entering the restricted zone around North Sentinel Island can carry a prison sentence of up to 3 years. But there's more. Violating the protection of Aboriginal tribes, risking their health and safety, illegally filming protected tribes like the Jarawa, these charges could stack. Mykhailo could be looking at 5 to 8 years in an Indian prison. As of now, he hasn't been formally charged. But given that countries are increasingly fed up with foreign influencers, treating their laws like suggestions, there's a real possibility he won't be coming home anytime soon. And even if he somehow avoids prison, his YouTube career is effectively over before it began. He's become internationally known, sure, but as a cautionary tale. As the guy who risked genocide for content, his channel will forever be associated with this one monumentally bad decision. The lesson nobody learns. Here's the thing that's almost fascinating about all this. Mykhailo had an out. In October 2024, when the hotel staff stopped him the first time, he could have walked away. He had a functioning channel. He was getting decent views. He was building something. Instead, he doubled down. He came back with better equipment, a better plan, all because waiting for organic growth wasn't fast enough. The Sentinelese have made it very clear that they want to be left alone. They've killed people to make that point. The Indian government has made it illegal to approach them. John Allen Chow's death made international headlines as a warning. And still, someone looked at all of that and thought, yeah, but what if I could get it on camera? That's not ambition. That's not even recklessness. That's something else entirely. So where does this leave us? Mykhailo is facing potential prison time in a foreign country. The Sentinelese hopefully won't suffer any consequences from his visit, but there's no way to know for sure, and the rest of us are left wondering what goes through someone's head when they decide that views are worth more than an entire civilization's safety. If there's any silver lining, it's that his story has become another data point in the long list of reasons not to mess with North Sentinel Island. Maybe someone else considering the same thing will see what happened to Mykhailo and think twice, but probably not. Because if there's one thing the internet has taught us, it's that there's always someone willing to do something stupid for attention, and sometimes they actually get away with it, just not this time.